Thank you, Anita. Geez, that's hard to follow up that. My God, I hope you all will be as excited about wildlife preserves Troy Meadows, beloved Troy Meadows, in the next hour. You will come and visit. You'll absolutely go, I got to come from Dubai and go visit this place. That's what I'm hoping happens at the end of this. So let's get started. Got a lot to get to. Um, the name of the program is the Bridge Watch. It's basically a treatise on Troy Meadows through the seasons. And so uh, I have to, I would be remiss if we didn't dedicate all of this, everything that they've accomplished, Luca, Lenny, Anita, and others, it would all be for naught if it wasn't for Robert Perkins, for his unwavering commitment to land, wildlife, not just in Troy Meadows, but throughout New Jersey. He passed away in 2017. I had the pleasure of knowing him maybe the last 5, 6 years of his life, where we would have extensive talks past midnight about ecology and the world of New Jersey's environmental politics, its future, its past. And I valued and treasured every moment of those conversations and dedicate this program and all of the efforts of Lenny and Luca, father and son team extraordinaire, and Anita, who just works tirelessly behind the scenes, who's a great citizen scientist, by the way. Matter of fact, all three of these fine gentlemen and ladies that you see on your screen are excellent ecologists and stewards of this special place. Um, so let me get started by talking about the bridge. The bridge was created by Lenny. He put these cement blocks across the mighty Troy Brook that runs underneath it. Again, back in 2011, and I put a roofer's pick. That's what the bridge really is. It's just a steel roofer's pick that runs on the top of the bridge and now becomes a scent post for every mammal under the sun that walks along the edge of the brook, like this red fox. The two piles of poop next to it are from raccoons and otters. So pretty amazing how they picked this particular spot to mark their nocturnal trails. And this is where I've gone I come to on every free moment I have. I've spent more than 500 hours at my beloved bridge where I can go no further lest my Toyota Tundra floats. And we don't want it to float. I belovedly call it the hog now. And I do a lot of my observations from the front seat of this truck. Um, and I'm, especially when it's cold in the winter, I have a blind that I put along a certain section of the bridge, which I go out and sit in, but I'll come back in the truck to stay warm, especially during cold winter months. And let me just explain, we have this cartoonish map of the area associated with the bridge that depicts the general surroundings. I'll be resorting back and forth to it during this program, but just to show you some features. So there's the steel bridge, there's my truck. This floodplain is very important to what you're going to see during this presentation. I'm a professional wildlife photographer, and I am able again to use the truck as a blind, and I can see this area with a pretty long lens, and I get a lot of interesting sightings of wild things, which I'm going to show you shortly. But pay attention to the devil's claw. This is an elm that's still alive, but has fallen down. It's actually in leaf right now. It's actually gone to seed a week ago, and now it's in leaf out, and it crosses partially across the brook, not totally across like I show here. But that's an important feature for me. when I'm documenting what's going on at the bridge. And then, of course, on the other side is a series of downed, again, elm and some dead oaks with a pile of sediment that meets the center of the stream. Lots of things have happened there. And then all these are minor features where I'll be talking about some of the things I've seen in those features. The fences, fence A, B, and C, are part of a mitigation bank. Too long, too much information for one program. That's a whole program on and of itself to talk about a wetland mitigation bank that helps fund wildlife preserves operation, their day-to-day operations. So,
hey, Blaine, if I can interrupt, I'm not seeing your shared screen. Is there anyone else?
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, I have it.
Yes, Mark, I can.
I cannot. So,
Mark, if you look on the top left, there's a little drop down, and you might just be in meeting, but there's an option to view Blaine's screen.
yeah, but I can't get it. Sorry.
Mark, do you want me to come over there?
I got it.
You got it? Good.
Very good. Okay.
You're all set, Taylor?
All good.
Okay, good. Again, we were from a very small neighborhood in Florham Park, and we were kind of special. So that you saw a little bit of that just now. I love you, brother. Okay, so back to the program.
Love you back.
So if you take a drone and you fly straight up from the bridge, you take that drone straight up and you look east, this is what you're going to see. Luca flew a drone. I would have these live images if the video could possibly download at the rate that's necessary to see it smoothly. Luke and I were testing today, and it's just too choppy. But I was able to take some stills, and they're very important stills because now you're going to get where the bridge is in a greater landscape in northern New Jersey, northeastern part of Morris County is where Troy Meadows lies, between 280 on the northern side and Route 10 on the southern side. To the east, and that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing the Susquehanna Roseland transmission lines here. You're seeing the third Watchung Mountains, which I'll talk about because that held back glacial water 15,000 years ago, which created Troy Meadows itself, which is really a drying lake as we speak. This drying lake created a series of bottomlands and wetlands. And if you were here 15,000 years ago and you were at the area of the bridge and you looked up, you'd be under 180 feet of water. I'll give you a second to let the goosebumps settle on that one. But it's pretty neat to think that you're still in this drying lake. And a matter of fact, there's a lot of portions of this drying lake, which I'll talk about shortly. If you look to the northeast, a little bit north of where I just was, you can see Troy Brook, how sinuous it is and how it winds and wraps around within the interior of the meadows. And that's a very important brook because it feeds the land through sediments that deposit during high water times, and seeds and debris, and things move around. It's a living, breathing system. People just look at things in a static sense, right? You take a hike, everything's static. But when you come to learn how the system works, it's really a living, breathing system. So you have back here, you have the Troy Brook here, and you have the transmission line here, but that's also pointing toward 280. And of course, there's my beloved floodplain, and there's the Devil's Claw that I talked about that goes over the brook. My truck's right about here. So hopefully that helps. Now, if you turn the drone to the north, which is all Luke is doing, is he's just gimbaling the drone northeast, south, and west. And now he's looking north. Look at this. Anybody from this area knows that's about where the Booton Reservoir is. Okay. I think this is Preakness Mountain up here, another part of the Watchungs. Anyway, That gives you some idea. And then if you look due west, you'd be looking at a feature behind me, behind my truck, which is a gas transmission line right of way. You can drive on it. A matter of fact, when I come in to the Bridge Watch area, I make a right about there, and I drive right into the bridge. Right here, if people know Morris County and Morris Plains, and you drive up Route 10, which is about here, get into Morris Plains, those are those really expensive townhomes at the top of that hill, which if you were on a deck on one of those townhomes, you'd be looking at Manhattan clear as a bell. But that gives you an indication of where we sit in the greater landscape. Now, if we look south, we see that gas transmission line surrounded by that nasty plant called Phragmites or tall reedgrass, which wildlife preserves and any ecological restoration ecologist wants to get the heck out of Dallas with that crap, because it's all crap. It's just nonsensical, non-living area where the reeds grow really tight and nothing much lives in it because it's a non-native species. Yes, there's red-winged blackbirds. Somebody's going to say, yeah, I see red-winged blackbirds nesting in it. Yes, they do. But if it was a different mosaic, you'd have a lot more to talk about. But right now, it's all Phragmites along that transmission line. And there's Troy Meadows Road. Goes out to North Beverick Road, South Beverick. You guys can correct me. But it goes down right through to about here, where it's no longer a road that you can drive on. You can drive on it, but it's a broken up, really dirt, somewhat gravelly road, very hard to drive on. Goes to a gun range, kind of in the center of the preserve, what I like to call the penetralia of the meadows, the centermost recesses. And then it stops, but you can get out of your car if you made it that far without blowing a differential. And then you can hike the rest of the way to East Hanover. You come to the Whippany River. And a long time ago, there was a bridge over the Whippany River where you could literally get across and travel to East Hanover. So anyway, I have a polygon where it's 5 acres, where I spend all my time observing, documenting, and otherwise noting every living thing in every season. I'm talking about insects, invertebrates, fish, of course, birds, which you're going to see a lot of, and reptiles and amphibians in this 5 acre polygon. Now, why do I sit in this polygon? Because it's easy to traverse. If you were on the ground, you'd see that my demarcation areas are unhindered by areas of barberry and things that would stop me from going too far. Plus, I wanted to keep it simple enough or small enough where I could get out of my truck and walk it a few times a day. Because, if I'm spending 10 hours, which I did Sunday at this site, basically dawn to dusk, I get out of my truck and I walk around and get some exercise and look at the subhabitats that exist in this polygon. But I center most of my observations right next to the Troy Brook. The rest of the area I take note of. And this is the Troy Brook, the general direction that it goes. So like I said, I have a field notebook where I document everything during the course of the day the time that I'm there. Of course, understanding temperature and how much sunlight, wind speed, that type of things. But it's all about the timing of nature. When do things emerge? What's happening? I want this to be a living, breathing notebook where somebody, when I'm gone from this valley of tears, I can pass these books on and somebody else can take up the mantle and document life on Earth in one little speck of land. I'm in my 3rd year doing this Bridge Watch, so hundreds of pages of notes. I still as much time as life will allow between my job. so that I can inspire folks to be the best stewards they can be of this precious resource, helping, I hope, to ensure its survival for future generations to come. So you saw that notebook. I talked about a painted turtle. Here he is on July 28th. This year, just 2 days into spring, I saw my first painted turtle. So you say, why you take so much note? Who cares what time things emerge? Well, this is pretty wild. This year, I saw my first painted turtles on the same log that this one's on, 2 days into spring. And in years past, it took me to July. Now, why is that? There's various hypotheses that I can bring, but it's interesting to the natural scientists and ecologists to try to figure these out. But let me give you a spoiler alert to this whole thing here called the Bridge Watch. And the big takeaway from this presentation, okay, it's that all the images you're about to bear witness to were taken within a 5-acre slither of Troy Meadows. That's centered around the bridge. Now think about that, right? The pictures herein were taken throughout the year, are a combination of 500 hours of observation, but it begs me to repeat, as this is the fulcrum point of my message to you this evening. All of the species shown, documented in this presentation, unless I state otherwise, were taken within this tiny speck of the Earth's skin, holding on, these critters, literally by a thread within the meadows. Now that's the bad message. That's the the Grim Reaper message, but it's true. They're holding on by a thread, and I'll tell you why in a second. This map tells some of the story. You can see all the towns that surround it. Like most large open spaces, they're being consumed from without to within. So I would assert that as we nip, tuck, pull, and pry at the corner of what I call the Great Swamp's little sister, that's Troy Meadows, the Meadows is, in the truest sense of the word, a battleground where the survival of species found therein are at risk. Here I am. You want to know where my truck lies? And this is this 2,600 acres of Troy Meadows. By the way, the state owns 819 acres. Morris County Park's about 124. The municipalities that surround it about 185. 1,604 acres are wildlife preserves oversight. 500 acres is a mitigation bank that they have stewardship over, and 65 acres of that mitigation bank is fenced. Now I tell you that, but I gotta say, it's Wildlife Preserve, Will, who's a volunteer, and Nick Homyak, who's a volunteer. These guys do the heavy lifting. They're always out pulling invasives, taking garbage out, working with the primary land stewards, Lenny and Luca, to make sure that this place remains a viable ecological system for future generations. So kudos to all that are involved, as Anita pointed out. If you look at a topographic map, you see it's all a wetland, right? But let's talk about this place. Where does the watch occur in the greater landscape? Well, we've already established that the 5 acres is nestled somewhere within Troy Meadows Wetland Reserve, this 2,600 acres of pure, unadulterated, unhindered bottomland, stored over by these dedicated folks. So again, we got to give them the shout out. It's just a mile and a half where I park from Route 280, where the din can be heard most times I'm out there, especially when there's no leaf out in winter. Then, of course, you hear air traffic pretty much all the time. But you can bet the farm, you can bet the firehouse, you can bet the schools, you can bet the subdivisions in the municipal ball fields on it, that if it wasn't for the fact Troy Meadows was predominantly wetland, our governing bodies would have paved it over 5 times. Guaranteed, you know? So it's those ball fields, right? Paved over so that little Johnny can play t-ball at age 5. That's what would happen. Picture it. The days are long gone where we as a collective society provide moments of thought for the intrinsic value of open spaces and park. Nobody thinks about that anymore. What the effect of the removal of this open space has on our other co-inhabitants is barely an afterthought these days. I'm sad to report. Mention a blue spotted salamander at a planning board meeting? Oh my God. A hearing where maybe a future ball field is proposed where little Johnny got to be the next A-Rod? And I can guarantee you the score will be Rick Mom and Dad's 100, blue spotted salamanders, nothing. For it really doesn't matter if the red-backed salamander, the American bittern, state endangered bird that inhabits the meadows, red-bellied woodpeckers, or ruby-crowned kinglets, our common yellowthroats exist here. You know, they'll have another place to live. Just move on. You pave it over, they'll move on. They'll thrive. They'll be okay. Okay. All my venting is over now, and now I'd be remiss if I didn't spend a minute on the geologic history of this place before I move to the critter portion of the program. Sitting at the bridge overlooking the mighty Troy Brook is amazing enough during most of the sits. But when you think about 18,000 years ago and 180 feet of water, well, that's pretty cool. This was ancient glacial Lake Passaic, you know, bounded by the Watchung Mountains, which were pushed down by glaciers, built up, and then the highlands, which is granite, hard granite, nice. Couldn't move that. You could scour the top. That's what you see here. The glacier came down and created this English muffin look to it. Rick Lev, a geologist, is with us today and could talk about this for hours. But needless to say, it scoured out a bottomland. In it, when the glacier retreated, it melted. When it melted, it created the lakes, created the Great Swamp, Black Meadows, Troy Meadows, created Hatfield Swamp, Lee Meadows, all these other meadows. And they are wonderlands of natural delights right now. The Troy Meadows is designated as a New Jersey Natural Heritage Site, rife with life. It's a priority and an exceptional resource value wetland. And for those willing to spend the time and view the naturescape as a mansion, picture it as a mansion, you can envision the endless windows with views from every angle, where you look out one season of the same window, you see something different. Look out another one in a different season, you see something. It's a giant mansion. That's what I love about Troy Meadows. So here it is right here on the map again. And it harbors some really, really, really cool critters. The reason why these wetlands are held in such high esteem is its ability to house this variety of rare and endangered species. It's the last bastion, maybe, for the likes of the red-headed woodpecker. This is, if you live in New Jersey, this is the state license plate bird. In Troy Meadows is a stronghold for the population of redheads. We have a friend on right now who's wondering where they went. They are kind of cyclic with, they're cyclic with the acorn mass. You know, when acorns are really prevalent, you get good populations of redhead, especially if you got bottomland swamps to fulfill their life histories. But when acorns are not as abundant, they tend to move on. And I think we're in a down cycle at Troy Meadows. But I'm going to talk about woodpeckers shortly too, because we are the woodpecker capital of the state, Troy Meadows is. Here's a woodpecker, redheaded, that I took a picture of inside Fence C where they breed. We also in Troy Meadows have breeding barred owls. We have this could be the poster child for Troy Meadows. This is a blue spotted salamander. This particular species has a disjunct range, simply stated. You won't see another population until you travel north about 5 miles, and then another 10 miles west and that's disjunct. Their habitats aren't connected, which when they're isolated like this makes them very vulnerable to extinction because they can't genetically impart their genes to and fro, back and front. So, but what a cool species. You only see it in spring pulling logs near their vernal ponds, these ponds that stay wet just for a short period of time, but they're predator free. If they dry up by summer, there's no fish in them. So these guys can lay eggs and not get eaten by fish. We have bald eagles in Troy Meadows. They're back in the state, 292 nests and counting. They just keep growing ever since we did away with DDT back in the 70s. Thank you, Rachel Carson. And they're back. Thank you, Marty McHugh, who told me this morning, I think he's on, he's one of our former Fish and Wildlife chiefs of staff. He headed the Fish and Wildlife department 20 years ago. And he was telling me when they first, when they had the last remaining eagle, they would, they took the young out of the nest and puppet fed them at the Fish and Wildlife centers, and then put them back in the nests, and they grew from there once we got rid of all that nastiness. We also have a new species in Troy Meadows called the Atlantic Coast leopard frog. Here he is now. I don't know where the third picture went, but it disappeared from my slideshow. I apologize for that. But this is a very, very rare species. Again, it was just discovered maybe 15 years ago by a young scientist from Rutgers. He found his, oh, there it is, Atlantic Coast leopard frog in Staten Island, of all places. We have the rare state-threatened red-shouldered hawk nesting in Troy Meadows, not the red-tailed hawk, which is photographed here on a piece of the devil's claw in 2023. Here's that devil's claw. I sketched it, one of the first sketches I made of the devil's claw. It's a very important feature in my time at the bridge. I love it because there's always something on it. And now Troy Meadows has two potential species that we keep looking for. Now that we have a drone, Luca uses a drone, this will be good for searching for bog turtle and wood turtle, federally endangered bog turtle and a state threatened wood turtle. So we're on the hunt for these. We suspect they're there, but they are very habitat specific. But let me sit back, relax, have another cup of coffee, an adult beverage, and let me marinate your visual cortex in some of Troy Meadows' wildlife. Notice the dates. And remember, this is within that 5-acre polygon. That's the takeaway. Everything you're seeing, this fat-headed wasp on foam flower, this wood thrush, all within that polygon, this hedge bindweed in bloom. Again, you got to go back. You got to document it through the seasons. The red-bellied woodpecker. You know, when I bring my truck, it doesn't matter if I'm there at sunup on June 23rd when it's, you know, sun is 5:10 in the morning. If I just drive my truck to the spot, a red-bellied comes down and churs because I put suet behind the wildlife preserve sign, and he knows my truck. It's just like clockwork. It's amazing. Water snake. Ah, the infamous Megarrhiza. This is a type of ichneumon wasp. But look at that long ovipositor. Will, who's a great naturalist with this group, pointed them out to me a few years back that they take advantage of rotting logs inside the meadows. So it's not just the bugs and the bunnies, it's the mammals too. It's the cutesy stuff, and it's the insects like 12-spotted skimmers, and you know, who can beat the mallards? The mallards come right up to my truck. I always have corn, and in the winter when they need it most, I'll throw some corn out, and you know, a dozen mallards fly out of the brook and surround my truck and usurp my corn. There's always somebody photographing nearby, whether it's AJ. He's a bridge watcher too. He comes sometimes. He looks at me, looking at him. But let's take you through the seasons. Let's start with spring. There's the brook there. A couple weeks ago, lesser celandine, not a native species. Actually, it's pretty nasty ecologically as it takes over, as you can see here, the floodplains, and outcompetes other things. But man, it sure is beautiful. The slate-colored juncos, they'll be moving on in about a month, but they're still here. They're here all winter. They come back in October, stay for about 5 months, and then head back north to boreal forest where they breed. The blue jays that you see now are not the same blue jays you saw a month ago. Blue jays work in troops during their time here, and but they migrate. So the blue jays that we have next to the bridge just in the last week were not the same blue jays I had a month ago. One of my favorite things I look forward to, and I always write down, I document the first pair of wood ducks that come to the bridge, because the wildlife preserves has wood duck boxes near the brook, alongside the brook, and they inspect them almost like clockwork early on in later in March, early April. It's always within a week's time that they come. And they're tree climbing ducks. They're tree cavity nesting ducks. So they branch. It's crazy. And they're freaking beautiful. I cannot get enough wood duck in my life. You gotta have wood duck. More wood duck. What's that Saturday Night Live thing? More cowbell. I say more wood duck. There's the boxes that they have up where they nest. And then, March, you see the geese pair up. I love native geese, the ones that stay and nest inside the preserve. These are not the white collar geese you see on the corporate lawns. These are the tough guys. These are blue collar geese that hang out at Troy Meadows, raise their young. Back in 23, I saw about 11 goslings in tow. And then by 2-3 weeks later, when I'm counting, it was down to 1. What do you think was the main culprit of their demise? Anybody? Keep it to yourself. There you go. It's the snapping turtles. They hunt underneath the water, and it's just goslings are just hors d'oeuvres to a snapping turtle. Red fox. Almost every time I'm at the bridge, I'll have a red fox, usually the same fox sighting, like this guy here that I photographed this past winter. Red fox are more comfortable near homes, though. Open woodland edges where game is more plentiful, so they avoid the riparian swamp interiors. However, they're there when time demands it. And so here's my bridge watch area. Most of the red fox are coming from backyards on Troy Meadows Road. And not unstrangely, people who know Kane is in New Jersey know we have coy wolves, not coyote. Somebody calls them coyote, correct them. These are 60% coyote, 30% gray wolf, and about 10% dog. And what do you notice about this otherwise beautiful coyote? Now, you're always seeing their scats everywhere, but what do you notice? It's got mange. Okay, we have game cameras now that we're using and having fun with. I'm putting them up all over the place, so we're getting Rocky, of course, raccoon. I see it scat everywhere, especially on the bridge. It just piles up its scat on scat on scat. It's a scatologist system. You see their prints everywhere. We're catching possums, of course, on the game camera, our only North American marsupial. We're getting deer on the game camera, no surprise there. They dropped their antlers about a month ago, a month and a half. And, oh, look, I saw this on April 24th. Next, on top of wood anemone, that's a spring ephemeral a really nice native plant in Troy Meadows that you can see this time of the year. In January, you see the does and you know that they are full of fawns. You can just imagine what's to come. And sometime in April, late April, early May, they drop their fawns. Of course, we got mallards and otters. Otters. If I'm at this bridge as many times as I am during the course of the year, I probably get treated with, on average, this is my 4th year, but I get honored by about 6 otter sightings a year. That was one of them. But let me talk about this fancy word up there, phenology, the timing in nature. When do things change? How do they change? Well, in spring, I could tell you what month it is. I worked with a woman who was a really good friend and colleague, Nicolette Albany. She may be on, I'm not sure. But we always test each other by the seasons. Like we look out and go, what week, what month would this be? When do we only see this or that or the other thing? So it's like when you see great blue herons with branches in their mouth, it's probably about April 5th, that week of April 5th. You could get it right to the day. When you see the first woodchucks, usually a warm day in late March, first woodchucks pop out. By April 3rd, you're seeing robins start to pair up. You see the males fighting on your lawns, starting to drink by the river. You don't see them until, about March. And then now on Earth Day, like it is today, happy Earth Day, everybody, is when the robins start to nest. It's always a sign that you're in late April. And then phoebes, a little earlier, last week in March, the phoebes come through. There was a couple of weeks in 23 where I saw over, 15 phoebes for 2 weeks by the bridge working on midges. Now this year, I didn't see more than a few phoebes, but I did see them at the same time last week in March. Same thing with the red-winged blackbirds. By about March 13th, you'll start seeing them work the cattails inside fence A of my bridge watch area. And the females, well, they're there. They come a little later, but they're really there. They're just up in the oak trees working the early oak buds and any insects they can find up there. That's where you see them. You'll see them in groups of 10 to 30. And they're always there, probably first week in April. Again, your phoebes are around now, but about the time the red maple starts to flower is when you see the phoebes. April 3rd, this is all phenology, timing in nature. You're going to see some warblers, pine warblers and palm warblers. That's what this is, a palm warbler. Absolutely gorgeous picture in great light that I took on the edge of the polygon near Troy Meadows Road. Now, this is the thing I love to brag about Troy Meadows and Troy Brook in the Bridge Range. Look at this. On April 4th, 2023, all 7 woodpeckers that breed in New Jersey were seen at the bridge. And I have verification from one of the top bird experts in the state, Dennis Breedy, who may or may not be on right now, but he came out and verified it because, you wouldn't believe it unless you saw it yourself. And I saw them all before noon. Northern flicker, red-bellied woodpecker, hairy woodpecker, red-headed woodpecker. You got the downy, you got the yellow-bellied sapsucker, and you have the pileated or pileated, whichever you prefer. All before noon, from the bridge in one spot. Oh yeah, the sapsucker was the tough one. Now it would be both of these. Like this year, I only got 5 of the 7. I did not get the redhead or the sapsucker on the same day. By about April 23rd, you're going to see spotted sandpiper utilize the mud flats of the Troy Brook. By about May 13th, you'll see red starts come in. then warbling vireos maybe a little later. You'll see tanagers before June 3rd, but that's when I photographed this guy singing above the bridge, right above the bridge. I took that picture in a beech tree right above the bridge. Same with this yellow-throated vireo. Last seen, it bred here near the bridge. I could not find the nest, but it definitely bred within the bridge watch area because I saw them every time I went to the bridge from about May 10th to June 28th. You know we're in summer, or at least the cusp of summer, when you see these rock and roll headed birds, this rose-breasted grosbeak chick. Yeah, you're pretty much at the end of June, first week of summer. The gray tree frogs start calling. Things are verdant, green, 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 green at the bridge. It hurts your eyes. There's so much green at the bridge. It's awesome. You gotta come to the bridge. You'll hear wood peewees singing from the trees. Unbelievable. You know you're in late spring, maybe early summer. And then sometimes it'll just flood itself out. You'll get a weird late June rain. This was a 3-inch rain event. That's all it took. Hey, you know what else about Troy Meadows? It's a giant sponge. It's this big giant tub. If it wasn't for all you regulators out there, mayors, council people, if you don't have this system working at its top efficiency, okay, and if you don't protect every last of peripheral land that's left, okay, at least responsibly. I'm not saying you can't cut down the tree, but you gotta look at this place for what it is. It's a water storage facility, free of charge, working 365, 7 days a week, not asking you for a paycheck. You know how much it would cost you if you just keep shrunking this and then you had to store this water some other way with detention basins and whatnot. This is doing it free of charge, and it's purifying the water, for God's sakes. For God's sakes, it's a natural sponge. When are we going to realize that the natural capital that these last, oh, by the way, it's a smidgen of land, 2,600 acres. Oh my God. Everybody decided to pave most of these wetlands, and then they wonder why we're getting flooding in Little Falls and Wayne and back in Parsippany along Troy Road. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you cut down most of the forest and didn't leave much for flood storage. That's why we have to have these extraordinary flood hazard rules, okay? Extraordinary wetland rules. Okay, I'm going off again. This is about Troy Meadows. Let me get back to the critters, okay? And there he is in the water, photographing a slaty skimmer in summer, a damselfly. It's just beautiful. How about a striped horsefly? Oh, I swat those things dead. Look at how beautiful this freaking thing is. Forget about the name fly. It's pollinating Joe Pye weed as we speak. Does that mean you can't swat a fly? No, of course you can. Anything that bites me, tries to break my skin, I kill. So don't think I'm that far off the rails with this nature stuff. But I do appreciate beauty for beauty's sake. And when you see something like a striped eye, which is what, or a rainbowed eye horsefly, which is what it is, I think about all the functionality that it presents as a pollinator. Flies are a huge part of the pollinator community. When you think that 1 out of 3 bites of food that you put in your mouth is pollinator originated, I think you can understand why I'm so protective of it. And if you really want to put the exclamation point at the end of the sentence on how important Troy Meadows is, just go out in the middle of the night on July 27th, fire up a metal halide lamp, put it next to a big white sheet, and start counting the diversity of moths, like this ragweed flower moth or this tiger moth. Beautiful. Every bit as beautiful as any butterfly you've ever seen, right? This tersa moth. This is from outer space. This was scored and etched by the skilled hands of creation. Look at that thing. And then how about the regal moth? Oh my God. This is all in one night at Troy Meadows. I've done a lot of moth survey, and everybody loves the Luna moth, which is always around throughout the spring, summer, and early fall in the meadows. But can you imagine? Did you ever think that a moth could be so beautiful, like the darling underwing? Yes, that's the name, the darling underwing. They are amazing. To us knuckle dragging primates, we think of them as just those wasted brown jobs, here to chew our gardens and destroy our clothes. But I'm here to tell you that they're much more than that. They're the heavy lifters. They're the things that, and again, this is all taken at and around the bridge, 5-acre polygon. Keep that in mind. That's the takeaway. They're feeding the moths, the moth larvae, all the birds. A red-eyed vireo eats 5,122 insects. That's one statistic from Doug Tallamy from the University of Delaware. In one day, a pair of red-eyed vireos are eating that much biomass, keeping the leaves intact. Of course, you need these insects to do some eating, some herbivory, because that keeps the trees healthy, because the trees fight back, and the trees fight back with chemicals. And when they fight back with chemicals, they become a balanced system. When you create things out of balance, when you take away the screws, the nuts, the cogs of the wheel, then the engine doesn't run as well. There's my reminder alert. All images from the bridge watch in the polygon area. Keep that in mind. So all these bugs are feeding birds, they're feeding the frogs. Got a lot of green frogs in Lenny's pond that he created behind me on the bridge. But by about August 1st, you're not seeing any more grosbeaks. They're gone. By fall, the yellow warblers are gone. The black-throated blue warblers are gone, all seen at the bridge. The hooded warblers gone. You're getting into fall. You're seeing the last of the black and white warblers, which just got here, by the way, maybe this week from down south. I was in North Carolina a week ago. I saw my first black and white, and I have a good friend that reported that he had his first black and white up here this week. And of course, our otters. This otter is on that log that crosses the bridge. And he came one early fall morning to hang out on this log. He was scratching his back. I have a great video. I'd show it to you if we had good download speeds. But this guy was literally scratching his back, itching his ear. He put on a show for 20 minutes. I got some fantastic pictures. But minks are everywhere along Troy. I see minks maybe 30 times a year at the bridge, just by happenstance. The other morning, Sunday morning, one came right across, probably the same one I've been seeing, right across the bridge, went into some rocks underneath where Lenny built the bridge, and then walked along the side of Troy Brook. I watched him for quite a distance. Their number one prey animal is muskrat, which I see often at Troy Meadows. But mink eat muskrat. They're vicious. Muskrats weigh more than the mink, but the mink can apprehend and take down a muskrat. So summer ends and fall begins when you see the last hummingbirds. This is a ruby-throated hummingbird catching raindrops. September 21st, last days of summer into fall. And then, the fledgling pileated woodpeckers and their adults are after what? What do they eat? There's your quickie quiz, pop-up quiz. They eat carpenter ants. These are sterile females, I guess, doing battle. But that's what this guy's after. This is a log right behind me at the bridge. And I see pileateds almost every time I'm out there. And of course, there's always a hanging football-shaped nest of bald-faced hornets somewhere. And it's the pollinators that do the heavy lifting the last part of fall, on the jewelweed and the goldenrods. Sweat bees, solitary bees, spider wasps, robber flies, beetles of all imaginable varieties, genera, and taxogroups. But you know you're in fall when you're seeing the white-breasted nuthatch grab the acorns and just look in the nooks and crannies of the bark. Or you see a hooded merganser in the brook grabbing frogs from underneath the water. It's a hooded merganser female. Oh, kingfisher, this fish-eating bird that goes up and down Troy Brook, stops, dives into the water head first, tries to catch fish, which, by the way, Troy Brook has a decent variety of fish. I want the folks to get a fisheries biologist to do some electroshocking inventories to see exactly what's in this brook. Electroshock does not kill the fish, just stuns them so you can count them. But I've seen kingfishers with dace, with small perch, with crappies, and of course carp. They can eat a whole carp. They could swallow a whole carp. I have a picture of that somewhere. Lenny's honeybees. Lenny's an apiist, so he has honeybee boxes in the meadows along the transmission lines, and they come in mass in fall and do a great job on the asters, like this New York aster. But of course, dragonflies are still prevalent, like this cherry-faced meadowhawk on an amanita mushroom, poisonous mushroom. But you know what's fun? It's always fun to tell people that one of the most beneficial fruits in the forest, and Troy Meadows is no exception, neither is your backyard, is poison ivy. Poison ivy berries are native. They're highly dense with macronutrients, and they are very, very important to migrating birds, local birds like this hairy woodpecker during fall when they ripen. And yes, do you want poison ivy growing over your yard? Of course not. But if you can let it grow on your woodland edges, make sure you do so, because it's a really excellent wildlife food. Here's a flock of turkeys just as fall is starting to turn to winter. There's turkeys. Most times I'm out at the bridge. I see either a couple of turkeys together, maybe a hen with young in summer, or some gobbling males that are displaying toward females. I've caught every behavior you can imagine from the bridge of wild turkey. But one of the funnest things to see, and it happens in fall, especially during good mass production years, a fancy way of saying fruit, nuts, berries, acorns. When the acorns drop in mass, the grackles come in the hundreds of thousands, and they work the woodlands in patches. They'll fly to one area, eat every acorn that's on the ground, and then fly up and work another area. They're absolutely amazing. People hate them. Oh, they're blackbirds. They're just crap-eating blackbirds. No, they're not. They're iridescent gemstones. They're absolutely fantastically glorified as long as there's a little sunlight. But everybody's like, oh, they're just, look at all those blackbirds. Got to get rid of those. No, you don't. They're doing a great job of pulling up all the mast and dropping some to become big, giant 300-year-old red oaks somewhere. So don't discount them. Red-shouldered hawks are working on meadow voles. I am amazed that the floodplain has so many meadow voles. I've watched red fox jump at them in the snow this winter. I've watched sharp-shinned hawks hunt them on the ground. And here's a red-shouldered hawk that grabbed one and flew through the meadows right in front of me. And then winter begins. It gets a little tough. It gets tough for me in the truck. I freeze like crazy, but I'm rewarded by things like winter wrens, awesome little tiny bird. And of course, cardinals in a windy snowstorm, or red-bellied woodpeckers in a snowstorm, or watching the juncos fight and have at it in winter. always fun. Hours of fun. I'm going to end with 2 drama periods. I sit and lots of times I'm just, observing weather patterns and nothing much is happening for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Then a squirrel will come out of a tree cavity and hang out and then climb down the tree and then head toward their Lenny and Luca's canoes. And under those canoes are what? Dry leaves. So the squirrel, he goes under the canoe from that tree cavity there, and he grabs a bunch of leaves, and he goes back to his cavity and brings it back. And he does this for about an hour and a half. Now I'm weighing a handful of leaves by myself, and I'm calculating because he's doing this dozens and dozens of times. I'm trying to approximate how many times. So how much leaf matter is in here? I calculated up to 15 pounds of leaf matter this guy brought back to his nest this one day. And that's why, I call myself a professional ecologist. This is what ecologists do. This is what natural scientists do. We want to know the where's, the why's, and the how fors of what they're doing. And so back and forth, they did 15 times, 14 times. And then another punctuated activity was a red fox. And this is a terrible grainy image, but if you look closely, you see he has a meadow vole. He dived into the snow. You ever see those documentaries where the red fox dives head first? I watched that. I couldn't catch it. I caught a little bit of it, but I didn't catch the perfect shot, but I did get him eaten of all. But then another day, this same red fox, I'm assuming it's the same one, based on the pattern of darkness on his paws on front and back. I took very careful notes, and also this patch of black led me to believe I was seeing the same fox every day. But he was hunting this one day, back and forth, looking for voles. Didn't catch anything. He was tired. He grabbed a great gulp of water. But as he was down there, a muskrat was underneath that row of that mud flat. Now, this was taken in a different season, but this was the side of the Troy Brook he was looking at. He saw the muskrat. He went down. He jumped from the side of the brook onto it, and he killed it with one big giant skull crunch. It was a quick dispatch. And then he took pieces of body parts, south, east, north, and west, and buried them 100 meters, 50 meters, 20 meters, until, there were parts of muskrat within the surrounding environment that only me and the fox knew about. And that's the end of my program. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you take away that the bridge is just a fleck of Earth's skin. And if you multiply all of what you saw, which is just a snippet of what I've seen, I could have gone on for 2 more hours. If you multiply that in your head by everything that's happening in Troy Meadows, you come to understand that it's a very special place that demands preservation. And please support Troy Meadows and wildlife preserves.